I'm excited to get this started. So I've done shorts on YouTube, and I'm trying to change this and really, get my channel going. So I'm excited to do this. Jesse Rivas Realty. I'm a real estate agent out here in Lodi, working in Central Valley and surrounding areas, the East Bay as well. And, so I'm excited to share, what I'm doing, what I've done, where I'm going. And really, more than all that, I want to help people, either get into their homes or sell their homes. Those are huge decisions and huge financial transactions. And I think it's important to have someone who, really will work hard and is transparent and honest and, really can help develop those lasting relationships, because these things are important. And having purchased and sold a variety of homes, many homes, I know what it means to have a good agent on your side, and I know what it means to have an agent who is really, I don't want to say they're not good, but doesn't have your best interest at heart, and it matters. So that's why I do what I do. I've been, I had been in the heavy civil construction industry for probably 23 years or more, working at a variety of things. I did so many things there, but I was a senior manager, senior HR manager, senior risk manager, and I did a variety of roles between that, working out at field project sites for about 11 or 12 of those years, and the rest in the home office, being more on the strategic side of things. And so it's been, it was great. I have my bachelor's degree in business, my master's degree in business, an MBA, the executive MBA, and I'm probably about 3/4 of the way done with my doctorate program, which is also in business. So, I try to back up what I do with education. I don't think you need an education and everything, and I'm not trying to say my education puts me above anyone, but for me, my education was important because it just opened up doors I wouldn't have thought. But my story isn't about that. My story really focuses kind of around the foreclosure side of things, because I've lived through a foreclosure in my life, and this was during the housing bubble around 2007 or 8 when I lost my home. I think it was 2007. And it was traumatic, on a lot of different levels. Losing your home and feeling like a failure, it's not easy, right? It's one of those things that really has an impact, because it's impact on your emotions, impact on your family, your financial situation, your credit. All your goals have to be reshifted when something like that happens in your life. You combine that with all the variables in life, it's tough. And so that's why I want to share, that situation with you, because I'm a little hesitant sometimes. I don't like talking about, when I've made a bounce back or a comeback, because it feels like the humble brag, right? The old humble brag. And every time, if I'm doing something like that, my dad's voice pops in my head, that you don't need to brag. If you're doing what you need to do and you're doing the right thing, your actions say everything that need to be said. You don't need to tell anybody about it. And I always, I live with that lesson, and ever since I was a kid. But still, I think it's important to share, what I went through, because I hope that someone can relate to that situation, and that it will help them and motivate them, and maybe provide a pathway to moving past some of the challenges that we encounter in life. And so this was, I guess, 2005-ish or so, and had bought a home out in Newman, little town out in the valley in California. Brand new home, new build, very nice, 4-bedroom. It wasn't real big, 2,000 square feet or something like that, but it was. I liked it because it was only one floor, didn't have 2 floors, and it was a beautiful home, and did all the upgrades and all that stuff. My mom, now, when I was buying that house, my mom's voice was in my head. Like, oh, she was actually there. She was, my dad was like, don't go crazy, don't, do all those crazy things, get what you need to get. My mom was like, no, son, this is your home, it's your dream home, get everything you want to get in this home. And so I did, had the marble entryway, had, all the upgrades in there, and it was a nice home, but during the course of that, what happened is I started going through a divorce. And as anyone who's been through a divorce, and whether it's a divorce or a breakup, those emotional challenges and all the things that go with it, especially when you have a child involved, it makes it tough because there's so many things that go into play. So not only am I living in Newman, which is, an hour and a half away from my mom and dad in Oakland, I'm out there and we're trying to, process that separation thing. And so my daughter was 4 at the time. And so it was 2005-ish. And I kept my daughter. And her mom decided to move, which was fine. It worked out well. And so it's a different level of burden from that, because now not only, am I going through a divorce, I have this beautiful little girl I got to take care of. And then at the same time, there was still the financial challenges going on with work, having to take a contract job while I was trying to get on board permanently so I could get benefits for my daughter, who had a few health challenges back then, right? And also losing my cars. I had a car that I absolutely loved, a supercharged Super Sport Monte Carlo. It was absolutely gorgeous, right? Love this car. And I also had an Avalanche. Lost both of those in repossession. So, it was just how it was. And I was trying to, find my way. Again, that guy I worked for as well was just, I won't say anything negative, but, when you're looking for work and you're trying to find the right job for you, don't settle for anything less. You know your worth. And even when you're desperate, if you have to take that job just to hold you over, understand that it's temporary, and you'll move on, because, it's amazing that there's some people out there like that. And I say that from experience of having to work with different people throughout my life, and understanding the good folks you work with, work for, versus those who, are trying to really maximize for themselves or the company without, thinking about their employees. It's weird. Anyway, so navigating all those challenges, and then really come to the point, the realization, I'm going to have to lose my house and it's going to go into foreclosure. It was tough. And the way it worked out at that time, and with the housing bubble, is that the value of the house when I moved in, I think it was $350,000 I paid for it, or $325,000. And so when we had first moved in, the value was still skyrocketing, right? We're still going up, and the home value was about $400,000. So at some point, I refinanced within that first year, and got some money out for some things you're trying to do, and which made my loan a little bigger. So I think it was up to like $360,000 instead of $325,000, and then the value crashed, and the home was worth like $120,000 or something like that. Here I was with this $360,000 loan. So it was ridiculous, and it really, at that time, because of my job situation and the divorce and all those things that go along with it, it was the best decision to foreclose on that home. In hindsight, being in the real estate industry, I understand there are different things I could have done. And if I had a different job at the time, I could have made different decisions. I could have rented the house out, and I could have helped, pay the loss if there was a loss on the monthly rent for a while. What we know about the housing market is that the values are always going to go back up, right? Always. So you'll see these bubbles. They happen, but the value's always going to go up. They're never going to stay down. Those economic challenges always come to pass, always. So when you come into these struggles, there's a way to get around it, and we'll touch on that maybe later. But that is, what was one of the challenges was, how do I navigate this foreclosure? And I ended up foreclosing, had to move back with my mom, and from that point to buying my next house was 7 years. But 2 of the years was just going through the foreclosure process. I had the house still. I was trying to figure out, I had the roommate thing. I was trying to make it work. I had this little girl. I couldn't go to work. I had to take her to my mom's, or, traveling back and forth to Oakland. All these things going on, and it wasn't working. And so finally, I decided to foreclose on the house, let it go, and it wasn't easy. It was really my dad saying, son, it's time. You have to make a decision. I was borrowing money from everybody, trying to kick the can down the road a little bit, and that's never a good financial philosophy. It's always you're gonna have to pay the piper at some point. And I let the house go, and it was tough. Messed up, the credit score for a long while, and I had to just deal with the job, credit, moving back with my mom, I think I just turned 40 or something like that, or 39. And, it was hard. It was hard on the old pride, and hard on everything. But just after, I got a great job, which was the first thing. Kept looking, found myself the right job. And I was there for 17 years until they closed their doors. And I would have stayed with them all the way to my retirement if I could have. That's a whole other story we could talk about. But after that job changed my life. That's when I went back to school, got my bachelor's degree. And that's when I went back and got my master's degree. And then, started my doctorate degree, and made this fabulous run through the heavy civil world. And so I enjoyed it. But there was just a night where, after staying with my mom for a short while, I told my mom and dad, look, I'm ready. I don't want to be here with you guys. I feel like it's a burden for you guys. And it wasn't. I know it wasn't, but that's what I felt like. I think they liked having me and my daughter there. But we moved to Alameda, so we were close by. Got an apartment. And that second night in that apartment, I told myself, and I'm buying a house. And I made a promise to my daughter. I said, look, we're gonna buy a house. We're gonna buy a house. We're going to get out of this apartment. We're going to have our own space. Because all those challenges of having an apartment, but it was being in that apartment, heckin' noisy, hearing people do their thing, being extra loud. I was like, this is not cool. I don't want my daughter here. I don't want to be there. And yeah, after I moved into that apartment, within a couple of years later, I started getting my credit right. That was the first thing. Started negotiating to get those bills paid, those collection items paid for the repossessions, and that alone was, almost $40,000. But you can negotiate. You can get those bills down. Now, I can help you with that. Got that done. Got the credit started going up pretty quickly. Paid off all the little things first, all those little debts, all those payday loans, everything that I could, do. Started paying it off, and that was it. Started chipping away, baby steps, one thing at a time. And within, I was in that place because I took over someone's lease. Their lease expired like maybe 2 months after I came in. I renewed that lease once, and that was it for a year. And after that year was up, we were moving into a new house. Our new house, not a brand new build, but a new house out in Bay Point. Beautiful home. And it was just remaining positive and thinking that I can do it, and knowing that I wanted to do well for my little girl. One amazing part of that story was I had took my daughter to a Warrior game, and I always love the Warriors, and I got a Warrior shirt on. And so we were at the Warrior game, and I don't think I was moping around, but in hindsight, it felt like I was moping. It was me and my daughter just trying to get her out so we could do something, and I ran into my cousin. My cousin Mario was there with his family and his sons, and they were watching a game. He said, come sit with us. There's no one here at the seat. So we went to go sit with them, and I was just telling them everything that was going on. And he said, he was like, cousin, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. He said, think of it like this. You get to choose again. And I know he was really referring to I could choose to who I have in my life, but for me, it was choosing myself and my daughter and doing what's best for us, not a relationship. And that's how I got into my next house. But that's my story. I'll expand on different areas. If you're going through a foreclosure or it seems like you're going to go into foreclosure, let's talk. Let's see what strategies we can do to help you navigate through this process. I'm here for it. I hope that this story, resonates with somebody. But yeah, if you're going through it, even if it's just a way out in the future type of talk, let's talk, because we could definitely start planning that pathway for you right now today, no matter where you're at. Have a good one.